And now the news in details. We delve into Africa. At least 14 people, including several children, were killed in a lightning strike in a refugee camp in northern Uganda, police said on Sunday. Officials say the victims were residents of the Palabek settlement camp, which primarily houses people displaced from South Sudan. They had been attending a prayer service in a makeshift metallic structure when the lightning struck on Saturday night. The camp is on the Uganda side of the country's border with South Sudan and houses around 80,000 people. Police spokesman Kituma Rusuke said 34 other people were injured and have been admitted to health centers in the area. The victims have not yet been identified. Deadly lightning is commonly reported in Uganda during the wet seasons. Sudan's Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan has appointed a new acting foreign minister following a cabinet decision issued on Sunday. Hussein Awad Ali has been relieved of his duties, with Ali Yusuf Ahmed taking his place, a statement from Burhan's office. Democrats Kamala Harris made her closing pitch for the U.S. presidency at a historical black church and to Arab Americans in battleground Michigan on Sunday, while her Republican rival Donald Trump embraced violent rhetoric at a rally in Pennsylvania. Opinion polls show the pair locked in a tight race, with Vice President Harris, 60 years old, boosted by strong support among female voters, while former President Trump, 78 years old, gains ground with Hispanic voters, especially men. Voters overall view both candidates unfavorably, according to polling, but that has not dissuaded them from casting ballots. More than 78 million Americans have already done so ahead of Tuesday's election day, according to the University of Florida's election lab. Approaching half the total 160 million votes cast in 2020, in which U.S. voter turnout was the highest in more than a century. Control of Congress is also up for grabs on Tuesday, with Republicans favored to capture a majority in the Senate, while Democrats are seen as having an even chance of flipping Republicans' narrow majority in the House of Representatives. Presidents whose parties failed to control both chambers have struggled to pass major legislation. In just 2 days, we have the power to decide the fate of our nation for generations to come, Harris told parishioners at Greater Emmanuel Institutional Church of God in Christ in Detroit. We must act. It's not enough to only pray, not enough to just talk. After Donald Trump's bid to overturn his 2020 election loss, an advocacy group was launched to take on the lawyers who aided in his doomed effort, hitting them with more than 80 ethics complaints. With Trump again the Republican candidate for the U.S. presidency, his allies have fired back at this group, named the 65 Project. A pro-Trump nonprofit known as American First Legal has accused the 65 Project of engaging in a left-wing attempt to intimidate conservative lawyers, filing a bar complaint earlier this week against the 65 Project's top lawyer Michael Teta. The October 28th complaint say Teta was targeting lawyers based solely upon their representation of a disfavored client. Teta said American First Legal's move shows the fear among those who would like to use the courts to subvert democracy. A representative of the body that weighs lawyer misconduct allegations in Utah, where Teta is licensed, declined to comment on the complaint against Teta. The dwelling misconduct allegations underscores the critical role lawyers are once again playing as another close election looms. Some of the lawyers involved in Trump's unsuccessful 2020 bid to remain in power, which was premised on false claims of widespread fraud, have lost their licenses or been indicted. Trump has said he cannot possibly lose this time around unless Democrats cheat. This raises the prospects they would contest the results if Vice President Kamala Harris were declared the winner after the November 5th election. The 65 Project, named for the number of unsuccessful lawsuits, it says it says was filed to challenge Democratic President Joe Biden's win, says its mission is to deter lawyers from bringing false election claims. In September, the group pledged to spend at least $100,000 on advertisements in legal journals in battleground states, warning lawyers not to risk losing the law license by helping Trump. American First Legal, a nonprofit founded in 2021 by former Trump White House aide Stephen Miller, harshly criticized the arts on its website in announcing its complaint against Teta. The group has increasingly focused on the election this year after previously bringing suits challenging diversity and migration policies. Quincy Jones, a major influence in American music in his work with artists ranging from Count Basie to Frank Sinatra, and who then reshaped pop music by collaborating with Michael Jackson, died on Sunday at the age of 91, his publicist said. 2 Ohio police officers were indicted by a grand jury in the death of a black man whom officers restrained with a knee near his neck while he cried, "I can't breathe." The county prosecutor announced on Saturday in a case that evoked memories of the killing of George Floyd in 2020. The grand jury indicted officers Bio Shongnege, 24 years old, and Camden Bosch, 24 years old, of the Canton Police Department on Friday on charges of reckless homicide in the death of Frank Tyson, 53 years old, who was restrained after being suspected of leaving the scene of a single-car accident on April 18th. Cal Stone, the prosecuting attorney for Stark County, Ohio, said, "No one is above the law," Stone said at a press conference, "and no one is so far below it that they don't deserve its protections." It was unclear if their officer was represented by an attorney. The Canton Police Department did not immediately respond to inquiries from newsmen on Saturday. In body camera footage released by the Canton Police earlier this year, the officers are seen apprehending Tyson of Canton Township and holding him down in a nearby tavern, where he was suspected as having fled after his car hit a utility pole. After officers wrestled Tyson to the ground and handcuffed him, one is seen in the footage placing a knee on Tyson's back near his neck for about 30 seconds. Tyson can be heard repeatedly saying, "I can't breathe. I can't get off my neck," as an officer yells, "Calm down and you're fine," before standing up. The video then showed Tyson lying motionless, face down for about 8 minutes before officers checked his pulse, removed the handcuffs, and began CPR. Tyson was pronounced dead at a local hospital. The incident is reminiscent of Floyd's deadly encounter with Minneapolis police 4 years ago. A cell phone video of Floyd's killing, which went viral, unleashed a wave of protests worldwide against police brutality and racism. The charges, a third-degree felony, carry a potential sentence of 36 months in prison and a $10 fine. Both Shonege and Brush were placed on administrative duties after the incident. They remained in custody on Saturday, and a bond hearing was scheduled for Monday morning. FBI said on Saturday that a video claiming it had apprehended 3 linked groups committing ballot fraud and another related to Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris' husband are not authentic. The FBI added that election integrity remains among its highest priorities ahead of Tuesday's election. The FBI is working closely with the state and local law enforcement partners to respond to election threats and protect our communities as Americans exercise the right to vote, it said. Attempts to deceive the public with false content about FBI operations undermine our democratic process and aims to erode trust in the electoral system. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who sustained a head injury last month, underwent imaging tests on Sunday in Brasilia, with the medical report saying his condition has remained stable. Lula can perform his usual activities and his situation will be reassessed in a week. The report is issued by the Syro-Lebanese hospital in Brasilia. In late October, Lula fell at home and suffered a small brain hemorrhage and trauma to the back of his head that required stitches, his personal doctor, Roberto Khalil, has said. The Brazilian leader has been working from the presidential palace but cancelled international travel, including to the upcoming Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Leaders Forum in Lima and United Nations Summit in Azerbaijan. Earthquake of magnitude 5.6 struck the Mendoza region of Argentina, the European Mediterranean Seismological Center said on Sunday. The quake was at a depth of 120 kilometers, European Mediterranean Seismological Center said. Bolivian President Luis Arce accused followers of his former mentor turned rival Evo Morales of being behind an armed takeover of military posts and holding soldiers hostage on Friday, ramping up tensions in the already restive Andean nation. Arce said the groups had forced their way into 3 military posts outside the central Bolivian city of Cochabamba, home to many supporters of ex-President Morales, after shooting at and launching dynamite at police. The groups have also broken into each post's armory, as said, calling the acts criminal and accusing the attackers of treason. Bolivia's military urged those responsible for the takeover to immediately and peacefully abandon each post. Morales, in a press conference later on Friday, called for a dialogue with the government. Without taking responsibility for the assault on the military post, Morales said he would launch a hunger strike until talks between the two sides began. The lives of my instructors and soldiers are in danger, warned an unarmed military official in a recording broadcast on local media. Televised images showed a row of uniformed soldiers with their hands behind their backs, possibly tied, surrounded by members of the armed group. Arce urged solidarity, saying that many of the soldiers were working class and indigenous, much like their captors. Earlier this week, police and military had attempted to clear a weeks-long highway blockade by Morales supporters, strangling traffic between Cochabamba and Oruro. Protesters retaliated by launching dynamite at them from nearby hills, with police then launching tear gas. At least 15 people died and 20 were injured after a bus fell into a deep gorge in the North Indian state of Uttarakhand on Monday, an official told newsmen. The bus was coming from Garhwal in the north and was headed to Ramnagar with at least 42 passengers on board. Devendra Pincha, a local police officer, told newsmen by phone. The death toll is likely to rise as the condition of a few of the survivors is critical, he said. Visuals from news agency in which newsman was a minority stake showed an overturned bus lying beside a river at the base of a hill. State Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami said rescue officials were working rapidly to evacuate the injured. Poorly maintained bus veered off the road and plunged into a deep gorge in northern India on Monday, killing at least 24 people and injuring several others, officials said. The accident occurred in Almora district in the mountainous state of Uttarakhand. The bus was carrying 42 people and 24 bodies have been recovered, said Vinit Pal, a state government official. Teams of rescues and relief workers were deployed to the site, and authorities said the death toll may rise as they work to rescue passengers who may still be trapped inside. The state's Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami said the teams are working to quickly evacuate the injured passengers to the nearest health center for treatment and that authorities have been instructed to airlift those seriously hurt. The state government has opened an investigation into the accident, Pal said, adding that preliminary information suggested that the dilapidated bus skidded before tumbling down a 60-meter deep gorge. A number of passengers managed to escape or were thrown out by the impact and then alerted authorities about the accident. He added that 2 transport officials have been suspended for approving a bus that was in poor condition. India has some of the highest road death rates in the world, with hundreds of thousands of people killed and injured annually. Most crashes are blamed on reckless driving, poorly maintained roads, and aging vehicles. In July, at least 18 people died after a double-decker passenger bus collided with a milk truck in Uttar Pradesh state. In May, a bus carrying Hindu pilgrims skidded and rolled into a deep gulch on a mountainous highway in Indian-controlled Kashmir, killing at least 21 people. Malaysia has sent a complaint letter to Vietnam over its alleged expansion of the South China Sea reef that both countries claim as their own. Two officials told newsmen in a rare bilateral escalation not involving China. The move brings to light another of the multiple disputes in the strategic waterway, most of which China claims sovereignty over, with Beijing involved in frequent altercations with the Philippines and sporadic rows with Vietnam. The most contested features are around the Spratly archipelago, where China, Taiwan, Malaysia, Vietnam, Brunei, and the Philippines all have various claims and degrees of occupation. Malaysia's letter was sent to Vietnam's foreign ministry in early October, but has so far received no reply. The two officials say declining to be identified more precisely because the matter was sensitive. The complaint was over Vietnam's alleged artificial expansion of the Bac Canada Reef, an islet in the Spratlys where Vietnam has built numerous infrastructure, according to satellite images analyzed by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a Washington-based think tank, which were released last month. In late October, Radio Free Asia reported that Vietnam was also building an airstrip on the reef. Vietnam's foreign ministry did not reply to a request for comment. Malaysia's foreign ministry did not also comment. The letter preceded those publications and only criticized the enlargement of the islet, not the building of infrastructure, one of the officials said. China's activities have attracted the most attention, with 7 islands built in submerged reefs, some equipped with runways, docks, control towers, and missile batteries. Though complaints between Malaysia and Vietnam over territory are rare, Malaysia has taken issue regularly over what it says is encroachment by Vietnamese fishermen into its exclusive economic zone, leading to the arrest of some crew. 2 of Iran's revolutionary guards died in gyroplane crash in the southeastern region on Monday. The semi-official fast news agency cited the force's public relations department as saying. The accident happened near Sarkhan, a city in the province of Sistan Baluchistan, bordering Afghanistan and Pakistan, which has long been the site of frequent clashes between Iranian security forces and Sunni militants, as well as drug traffickers. 2nd Brigadier General Hamid Mazandarani, the commander of the Naniva Brigade of Golestan Province, and his pilot were martyred in his accident. However, it did not say why the commander of the brigade, based in the northern province, was visiting the southeast at the time. 10 Iranian border guards were killed in the province last month in clashes with suspected Sunni Muslims militants. Turkey stripped 3 elected pro-Kurdish mayors of their posts in southeastern cities on Monday for convictions and charges on terrorism-related offenses. The Interior Ministry said, appointing state officials in their places instead. Local governors replaced the mayors in the provincial centers of Mardin and Batman, while the mayor of Halferti in Saniliufa province has also unseated, it added. All belonged to the pro-Kurdish Dem party, which has 57 seats in the national parliament. Dozens of pro-Kurdish mayors from its predecessors' parties have been removed from the post on similar charges in the past. Last week, a mayor from the main opposition Republican People's Party was arrested after prosecutors accused him of belonging to the Kurdistan Workers' Party, banned as a terrorist group in Turkey. The changes followed a proposal by President Tayyip Erdogan's main ally last month, aimed at ending the state's 40-year conflict with the PPK. 3 Chinese astronauts returned to Earth on Monday after a 6-month stay on the Tiangong space station, part of China's effort to be a global leader in space exploration. A parachute slowed their capsule's nighttime descent to a remote landing area in China's Inner Mongolia region. The crew emerged after touching down at 1:24 a.m. A Chinese national flag struck in the ground near the capsule, flagged in the wind. In recent years, the country's space program has brought back rocks from the moon and landed a rover on Mars. It aims to put a person on the moon by 2030, which would make China the second nation after the United States to do so. The space station astronauts returned after welcoming a replacement three-person crew last week for the latest 6-month mission. The new team of 1 woman and 2 men will conduct experiments, carry out spacewalks, and install equipment to protect the station from space debris. China is among the countries that have created space debris, including the reported breakup of a rocket stage in August during the launch of the first 18 satellites for a global internet service similar to Starlink. The still growing constellation of satellites operated by Elon Musk's SpaceX. Astronauts from several nations have traveled to the International Space Station, but China is blocked from that program mainly because of U.S. concerns over the military's involvement in China's space program. China laid out an ambitious plan last month to become a leader in space science research by 2050 in conjunction with its advances in space exploration. You're watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Still ahead. 5 migrants died trying to reach Canary Islands. We'll be back after this break. Do stay with us.
From the lines across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring all the sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economic, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today. Only on ATN.
Thanks for staying with us. You're watching the broadcast of the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Remember, we are open for advert placements, bookings, and commercials. And you can connect with us and watch us on ATN Socials, Facebook and YouTube at Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok at Atlantic TV Network 1, X, formerly Twitter, at Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website at atlanticnetwork.tv. And now to the rest of our stories. Pacific Islands nation of Palau, important to the U.S. military amid tensions with China and among a dozen allies of Taiwan, holds a national election for president on Tuesday. President Surangel Wapes Jr. is contesting the post against his brother-in-law, former President Tommy Ramangesu, who stood at traffic intersections on Monday directly appealing to drivers for support. Voters will also elect 13 members of the National Senate. Palau this year renewed a compact of free association with Washington in a deal that will see it receive $890 million in economic assistance over 20 years in return for allowing continued U.S. military access to its maritime zone, airspace, and land. Palau's population of 18,000 is spread across an archipelago that sits between the Philippines and the U.S. military base on Guam. The U.S. military is constructing an over-the-horizon radar on Palau, scheduled to be completed in 2026. Palau is one of only 12 countries that have diplomatic ties with Taiwan, and Wapes has said China's move to bar tourist groups from traveling to Palau and a cyber attack in March are examples of pressures from Beijing to switch ties. To counter the fall in Chinese tourist arrivals, Palau has opened direct flights to Japan and Australia with support from those governments during the election campaign. Ramangesu said the Palau needs to ensure that foreign influences do not overshadow their identity or compromise their independence. His campaign did not respond to questions on which foreign influence he was referring to. Authorities in India's capital and surrounding areas handed out fines to the owners of thousands of vehicles in construction sites for infringing pollution rules in a bid to counter a slump in air quality during the last 3 weeks. New Delhi is the world's most polluted major city, Swiss group IQR said in its life rankings. Almost 60,000 vehicles and more than 7,500 building sites were fined, officials said, as the Central Pollution Control Board, CPCB, rated Monday's conditions very poor, with a score of 373 on its index. That rates level from 0 to 50 as good. As many as 54,000 of the vehicles lacked a pollution under control PUC certificate, showing permissible levels of emissions. The Commissioner for Air Quality Management said, adding that almost 3,900 more were impounded as overaged. Environmental compensation payments have been ordered for 597 sites, while 56 have been told to close. New Delhi battles intense pollution every winter as cold air traps emissions, dust, and smoke from farm fires in the adjoining farming states of Punjab and Haryana, forcing frequent school closures and construction curbs in response. Air quality in the region is expected to stay very poor until Wednesday. The Earth Sciences Ministry said and is likely to range from very poor to severe for the subsequent 6 days. The CPCB says a rating of severe in the range of 401 and 500 on its index affects the healthy and can have serious effects on those already suffering disease. Indonesia's National Disaster Management Agency said on Monday that at least 10 people have died as a series of volcanic eruptions widens on the remote island of Flores. The eruption at Mount Lewotobi, Laki-Laki, around midnight, spewed thick brownish ash as high as 2,000 meters into the air, and hot ashes hit several villages, burning down houses, including a convent of Catholic nuns, said Fireman Yusuf, an official at the Mount Lewotobi Laki. He said volcanic material was thrown up to 6 kilometers from its crater, blanketing nearby villages and towns with tons of volcanic debris and forcing residents to flee. Rescuers were still searching for more bodies buried under collapsed houses, said Abdul Muhari, the National Disasters Management Agency's spokesperson. Muhari said all the bodies, including a child, were found with a 4-kilometer radius of the crater. He said at least 10,000 people have been affected by the eruption in 6 villages of Wongintang district and 4 villages in Ilebura district. Some have fled to relatives' houses, while the local government is readying schools to use as temporary shelters. The country's volcano monitoring agency increased the volcano's alert status to the highest level and more than doubled the exclusion zone to a 7-kilometer radius after midnight on Monday as eruptions become more frequent. A nun in Hokeng village died and another was missing, said Augusta Palma, the head of the St. Gabriel Foundation that oversees convents on the majority Catholic island. Nuns ran out in panic under a rain of volcanic ash in the darkness, Palma said. Photos and videos circulated on social media showed tons of volcanic debris covering houses up to their rooftops in villages like Hokeng, where hot volcanic material set fire to houses. South Korea's main opposition Democratic Party leader, Lee Jae-myung, on Monday agreed to back government plans to scrap a scheme to tax profits on financial investments, citing the need to boost the country's undervalued stock market. Lee said he supported the government and ruling People Power parties push to scrap the financial investment income tax, adding that South Korea's stock market was suffering structural vulnerability and facing a downward trend unlike others. I could not avoid considering the position of 15 million stock investors leaning on the stock market, Lee said during a party meeting, while acknowledging our need to tax profits from financial investments such as stocks and bonds and boost market transparency. The decision comes after the People Power Party had been urging the Democratic Party, which has a majority in Parliament, to support its plan to scrap the tax that was originally due to take effect last year, but was delayed by 2 years until 2025. Under the tax scheme, capital gains of more than 50 million won from stock investments would be subject to a 20% tax, while profits over 300 million won would be subjected to a 25% tax. At least 11 people were injured when militants threw a grenade at Indian security forces on Sunday in a crowded flea market in Srinagar, capital of India-administered Kashmir, a police official said. Militants missed their target and instead injured at least 11 people, the official told newsmen. The official wished to remain unnamed as he was not authorized to speak to the media. The identity of the militant group responsible for the attack is unknown. The injured were rushed to hospital for treatment where they were in a stable condition, the official said, adding that the explosion had caused panic in the markets and sent choppers scrambling for cover. The attack comes a day after top commander of Lashkar-e-Taiba, a militant Islamist group, was killed along with 2 other militants by Indian troops in Kashmir. Kashmir has seen a spate of attacks since the government formed by an opposition alliance took over the territory, where separatist militants have fought security forces for decades, resulting in thousands of deaths. Since the new government took over earlier last month, 15 people have died in different militant attacks. Kashmir is claimed in full but ruled in part by both India and Pakistan, and the 2019 revocation of its spatial status, which saw it being split into 2 federal administered territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, led to the countries downgrading diplomatic ties. Top South Korean and European Union officials on Monday strongly condemned North Korea's reported troop dispatched to aid Russia's war against Ukraine and agreed to work together to try to block deepening military cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang. North Korea's alleged troop deployment threatens to expand the almost 3-year-long war and is causing security jitters in South Korea, where many worry Russia might reward the North by giving it sophisticated weapons, technology, or offering a defense commitment in the event of a conflict. on the Korean Peninsula. In a meeting in Seoul, South Korean Defense Minister Kim Jong-un and the EU's visiting foreign policy chief Joseph Borrell expressed serious concerns about North Korea's reported troop dispatch and strongly condemned it, according to a statement from the South Korean Defense Ministry. The two agreed to work together with the international community to try to obstruct Russian North Korean security cooperation, with a statement said. U.S. government said on Thursday that about 8,000 North Korean soldiers were in Russia near Ukraine's border and preparing to join Russia's flight against Ukraine in the coming days. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday urged allies to stop just watching and take steps before North Korean troops deployed in Russia reached the battlefield. According to U.S., South Korean and Ukrainian intelligence assessments, North Korea was estimated to have moved about 10,000 to 12,000 troops to Russia. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has used the Russian-Ukraine war as a way to expand defense and economic cooperation with Russia in the face of an intensified U.S.-led pressure campaign against his advancing nuclear program. U.S., South Korea and others accuses North Korea of having already exported artillery shells, missiles and other conventional arms to Russia. In a background briefing with local media on Monday, South Korea's military said North Korea has built anti-tank trench-like structures at two sites near the Korea's heavily armed border, where it blew up northern parts of the unused cross-border road and rail routes last month in a display of anger towards South Korea. People in France must work more, Finance Minister Antoine Armand said on Monday, adding that the fact that French people worked less than their counterparts in Europe was harming the economy due to lower tax contributions and social security payments. The government is examining reforms to speed up its sluggish economic growth, although changes to work practices are often opposed by trade unions. On average, a French person works clearly less than his neighbors over the course of a year, Armand said on TV. The consequences of these is fewer social security payments, less money to finance our social models, fewer tax receipts and ultimately fewer jobs, and less economic growth. France, the Eurozone's second biggest economy, wants to cut its public deficit to a targeted 5% of GDP by 2025. The country's 35-hour work week, introduced in 2000, has typically been fiercely defended by trade unions, while reforms to France's pension system have also faced widespread protests. Let's all work a bit more, collectively speaking, starting off by making sure that everyone respects the working hours that they have been given in all sectors, Armand said. Russia will launch 2 Iranian satellites into orbit using a Soyuz launcher on Tuesday, Iran's ambassador to Moscow said on Monday, as the two U.S.-sanctioned countries deepen their scientific relationship. In continuation of the development of Iran-Russia scientific and technological cooperation, 2 Iranian satellites, Kosar and Hod-Hod, will be launched to a 500-kilometer orbit of Earth on Tuesday, November 5th, by a Soyuz launch vehicle, Iranian ambassador to Russian Kazim Jalali said in a post on X. The development of Kosar, a high-resolution imaging satellite, and Hod-Hod, a small communication satellite, is the first substantial effort by Iran's private space sector. A report by Iran's semi-official news agency Tasnim said last month. Russia launched an Iranian research sensing satellite, Pars-1, into space in February using a Soyuz rocket from the Vostony Cosmodrome. Spain is deploying 7,500 troops to its eastern region hit by devastating floods, the government said on Monday in the face of rising discontent over the response to the catastrophe that has killed at least 217 people. The army sent about 5,000 soldiers over the weekend to help distribute food and water, clean up streets and protect shops and properties from looters. A further 2,500 will join them Defense Minister Margarita Robles told state-owned radio a warship carrying 104 Marine infantry soldiers as well as trucks with food and water was approaching Valencia port even as a strong hailstorm pummeled Barcelona some 300 kilometers to the north, according to reports. Rescue teams on Monday were searching for bodies in underground garages, including a 5,000-car park at Bonai Shopping Mall, near Valencia Airport, as well as river mouths where currents may have deposited bodies. Fatalities from space of worst flash floods in modern history edged higher to 217 on Sunday, almost all of them in the Valencia region, and more than 60 in the suburb of Paiporta. Local residents' anger was focused on late alerts from authorities about the dangers of flooding and perceived delayed responses by emergency service. On Sunday, some residents in Paiporta slung mud at Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and King Felipe and his wife, Queen Letizia, chanting, "Murderers, murderers." Transport Minister Oscar Pente said on Sunday the death toll had stabilized because all victims on the surface had been identified. And that's it on the international news for today. Before we go, let's take a look at the major stories. 14 people killed by